That's your Gap hoodie, is that right? That's you, who you're shooting at?
Young Dolph.
All right, now back it up again.
That's your Gap hoodie, is that right? He hit me. That's see who he is shooting at? Yeah, all right. Now back it up again. That right there is one of the dudes who met Young Dolph confessing on tape that he took part in the hit. And he ain't done talking because he's even pointing at Yo Gotti's name in the setup and hinting there's a whole list of people tied in.
The whole world never say that when they egging on the beat. When everybody put on a song, everybody egging out, nobody don't be saying that. We feel like that right now.
You can imagine how the street crowd is reacting. Nobody likes someone speaking on a case, and now he might have to stay alert forever. Now let's break this down because this is the hit that shook the whole city of Memphis. The streets out there move on respect, loyalty, and real talk. But even in a city that's seen wild situations, nothing hit like what happened that day in November 2021. This wasn't just drama, it was a straight-up nightmare that froze the whole community. We're talking about a public assassination of one of Memphis's most respected artists, Young Dolph.
You know how many people miss Dolph, man? And miss Big Jook, man? It fed a lot of people, bro. We just, we is on the outside looking in, we just think about that a couple days and whatever else on social media after that, but they families, they children, they brothers and they cousins, them people hurt for that.
This wasn't some random disagreement turning into violence. This was the type of situation that had neighborhoods whispering, OGs confused, fans crying, and the whole hip-hop world asking the same question: how did it even get this far? On November 17, 2021, the 36-year-old artist, born Adolph Robert Thornton Jr., was taken out in broad daylight at Makita's Homemade Butter Cookies, a spot he visited all the time for his favorite snacks. This wasn't a late-night setup in the shadows.
Did you know Big Jook?
Yeah, Jook was my boy.
Oh, that was your friend?
Yeah, that was my boy.
Well, in the trial, in the Justin Johnson straight drop trial, they say that Jook had a 100K hit on Dolph.
This was the middle of the day, out in the open, with no fear of cameras, witnesses, or consequences. It was bold, reckless, and shocking. And Dolph? He wasn't just some artist chasing fame. He was a real Memphis icon, a self-made millionaire who built paper route empire from nothing, without bending for anybody in the industry. He moved on independence and loyalty, and people respected him heavy for that. When the shooters hit him with 22 rounds, 22 shots, it showed this wasn't just a hit, it was pure overkill. This shook everybody to the core. That right there wasn't just a hit. That was a message, a warning, a straight-up example being made in the coldest way imaginable.
Well, since our last interview, Justin Johnson, aka Straight Drop, got sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Young Dolph.
Yeah.
And in fact, I think they gave him another 50 years.
The whole thing got caught on surveillance too. Cameras showing two masked dudes sliding up in a white Mercedes, jumping out with heavy firepower and letting shots fly while Dolph was literally just trying to grab some cookies. After they emptied their clips, they peeled off like it was just another regular day, leaving Memphis stunned. The city was hurting, and people wanted answers immediately because whoever planned this wasn't moving with emotion. They were moving with intention.
How did you feel when Straight Drop got sentenced to the murder?
I don't feel no type of way. I don't put myself in that like that. I kill myself.
The Memphis PD came in heavy too, and within months of the incident, they had rounded up 4 suspects and slapped them with charges. Justin Straight Drop Johnson and Cornelius Smith were pinned as the alleged shooters, the ones the authorities said carried out the attack. Then you had Hernandez Govan, who investigators claimed was the one putting pieces together, the so-called mastermind. And Jamarcus Johnson, Justin's half-brother, was accused of helping the suspects disappear and collect their payment.
Straight Drop only got $800 for that hit. Can you imagine killing somebody and your reward is a PlayStation and maybe a game or 2?
I don't know if that's true or not.
But even as the arrests rolled in, anybody who understands how street politics work could see this wasn't the full roster. No way 4 names told the whole story. Someone wanted Young Dolph gone, and the real question echoing through Memphis was simple: who pushed these guys to even do this? To understand all that, you gotta rewind and look at one of the most intense rap feuds the city ever saw. The long-running war between Young Dolph and Yo Gotti. This beef wasn't some internet back and forth or a couple of slick lines and songs. This was personal, messy, and deep-rooted, involving labels, cliques, violence, and losses that shook the city. This was the kind of rivalry where people on both ends were ready to move at any moment, and whenever their names hit the same conversation, the tension got thick enough to slice through.
It's a messed up situation. It's a messed up situation. And the fact that both, people were getting killed on both sides. There was other shootings and murders that were happening, man.
The story starts back around 2014 when Young Dolph was rising fast with his independent grind. Yo Gotti, real name Mario Mims, was already stamped in Memphis with his CMG label, and he allegedly tried to sign Dolph to the team. On paper, it looked like a clean business move, a big name pulling in a hungry rising star. But Dolph wasn't going for that. He had his own plans, his own paper route empire, and he wasn't about to be another artist on a label being told how to move or who to answer to. This was about control, pride, and vision, and Dolph wasn't letting anyone rewrite his blueprint. Dolph wanted to move like a real boss, owning his masters, calling his own shots, stacking his paper his way. That's the kind of independence anybody can respect, even if it rubbed certain folks the wrong way. But word around the scene was that Yo Gotti didn't take that rejection lightly. According to Dolph, the situation flipped fast. Dude went from showing love to acting like a full-time critic overnight.
But when it's egging on, it's all fun and games. When everybody promoting the beef against other rappers, they love it. That's the song you'll go watch, go listen to before you listen to his whole album.
Dolph even tweeted about it in 2016, saying, "Bra went from being my Nabo 1 fan and wanting to sign me to being my biggest hater." That line showed exactly how Dolph felt. Someone who once supported him suddenly switched up the moment Dolph refused to follow their structure. And in the streets, when someone changes up over ego and business, things can get dangerous quick. It didn't take long for the tension to spill into the music. Both artists started dropping shots in their tracks, and it got personal fast. In 2016, Dolph dropped his project King of Memphis, which was a direct challenge to a title Yo Gotti had been claiming for years. But the real spark hit in 2017 when Dolph released Play with Yo B.I., a track aimed straight at Gotti's pride, holding nothing back. Dolph claimed he had been involved with the mother of Gotti's child, put a Gotti look-alike in the video getting clowned, and even used cover art showing missed calls from Ho Gotti Baby Moma. In street culture, that's a major violation, the kind you can't just ignore or laugh off. When somebody plays with your reputation that publicly, especially in a city where respect is everything, people often want to respond with more than punchlines. And when both sides have real street ties and people willing to move for them, disrespect like that can take things into dangerous territory fast. Even Dolph spoke on how the world hypes up these beefs without thinking about the fallout, repeating, "We feel like that right now." That energy showed how real the situation had become. That's when the feud stopped being rap competition and turned into something way heavier, because Memphis is a city with serious gang history, strong loyalty, and neighborhoods that take pride seriously. In a place like that, these diss tracks don't stay online. They echo in real life. When you're challenging someone's reputation in a city built on respect, someone eventually decides to take action. The streets responded the street way, and sadly, that meant things got real dangerous, real fast. Not just once, but multiple times. The first major situation hit in February 2017 during CIAA weekend in Charlotte, North Carolina, when Young Dolph's bulletproof truck took over 100 shots. Whoever pulled up wasn't playing. They wanted him gone so badly they emptied enough rounds to shake the whole block. The only reason Dolph walked away was because he had the smarts to get that vehicle reinforced. But the danger didn't stop there. Just 7 months later, in September 2017, Dolph was hit multiple times outside the Loews Hollywood Hotel in Los Angeles, and this time it was way more serious. He was fighting for his life in critical condition. Reports even mentioned Yo Gotti as a person of interest since he was staying in the same hotel, but LAPD quickly shut that down and said he wasn't a suspect. One of Gotti's associates, Corey McClendon, got arrested on attempted murder charges, but like the earlier cases, he ended up beating it. Then came the moment that changed everything: the trial, the testimony, and the bombshell claims that had Memphis buzzing. When Justin "Straight Drop" Johnson finally went to trial in September 2024, almost 3 years after Dolph was killed, everybody connected to the scene had their attention locked in. This wasn't some small case involving random troublemakers. This was the kind of trial that could shake the whole rap scene by exposing the wrong people. Johnson was hit with first-degree murder, conspiracy, and being a felon caught with a firearm, charges that could keep a man behind bars for the rest of his life. The prosecution, led by Shelby County Assistant DA Paul Hagerman, came prepared with heavy evidence. They had surveillance showing two masked suspects hopping out of a white Mercedes and opening fire while Dolph was inside the cookie shop. They had phone records placing Johnson and the others right near the scene at the exact time. They even had ballistics tying the guns to the suspects. But the biggest blow, the piece that shook the courtroom, came from Johnson's own co-defendant, Cornelius Smith. Smith flipped and decided to cooperate for a chance at a lighter sentence, and when he opened his mouth, the whole case jumped to another level. His testimony wasn't just a confession, it was explosive. He didn't just talk about his own role in the shooting. He started naming other people and claiming the situation went way higher than two men with a grudge. This wasn't some simple street dispute. Smith made it sound like the plot stretched far beyond what anybody originally thought. According to Smith's sworn testimony, the hit on Young Dolph wasn't some random street situation or a beef between small-time hustlers. He claimed it was way bigger than that. Smith said the order came straight from Anthony Big Jook Mims, Yo Gotti's older brother, and a major figure in the CMG circle. That's the kind of accusation that shakes a whole city. Smith said the money was already arranged. He and Johnson were each supposed to get 40 racks for carrying out the shooting, while Hernandez Govan, the alleged mastermind behind the plan, was supposed to get 20 bands for putting the pieces together. Smith even claimed that he and Johnson had meetings with Big Jook in the weeks leading up to the murder, plotting out how everything was supposed to play out. And according to Smith, after they allegedly completed the hit, they hopped on FaceTime with Big Jook to confirm the job was done. But the claims didn't stop there. Smith also said somebody connected to CMG dropped 50 bands for his legal fees after he was arrested in January 2022. He said he couldn't identify exactly who paid it, but he was certain the money came from someone tied to CMG, which raised serious questions about how far the support might have gone. If that part is true, then this wouldn't just be about one person calling a shot. It could point to a wider involvement, maybe even somebody trying to shield the suspects behind the scenes. That kind of detail could push the situation into potential obstruction territory, stretching far beyond the original accusations. But this is where everything gets complicated. Justin Johnson's defense attorney, Luke Evans, jumped in and immediately went after Smith's credibility, blasting the idea that Smith was telling the whole truth. Evans said Smith was either exaggerating or flat-out fabricating stories to land himself a lighter deal with prosecutors. He brought up a letter Smith allegedly wrote from jail, where Smith supposedly told his family that he would say anything to avoid spending the rest of his life locked up. That kind of letter, if real, would destroy Smith's reliability and make people question every word he said. Evans also pointed out major contradictions in Smith's testimony, especially about the money. If the story keeps shifting, how much of it can really be trusted? Smith told the court he was promised $40,000 for helping carry out the hit, but he admitted he only got $800 total, with $500 up front and another $300 later. Even with all the holes in his story, the jury still sided with the prosecution. On September 26, 2024, Justin Johnson was found guilty on every single charge: first-degree murder, conspiracy, and being a felon caught with a weapon. The evidence, the surveillance videos, the phone records, and yes, even Smith's shaky testimony all led to the same outcome. Johnson was hit with a life sentence, and in Memphis, that means at least 51 years behind bars before he can even dream about parole. He's around 30 years old right now, so if he somehow survives the whole stretch, he'd be touching 81 before he ever sees the outside again. In other words, his old life is over permanently. But Johnson's conviction came with heavy baggage because it sparked a new wave of questions. Questions about who else might have had their hands in this situation. If Smith's testimony about Big Jook was taken seriously enough to help convict Johnson, then naturally people started wondering who else knew what was going on. And the huge question floating around was this: did Yo Gotti know anything about what his brother was allegedly setting up, or was he completely out of the loop? There's zero public evidence tying Yo Gotti personally to ordering or approving any kind of hit. Every allegation points at Big Jook, not Gotti. But the connection is still wild because Big Jook wasn't just family. He was Yo Gotti's blood brother and a major figure inside CMG operations. Then the situation got even messier because Big Jook was killed in January 2024 outside a Memphis restaurant during a repass after a funeral. To this day, nobody has been arrested for Jook's death. In the streets, some people whispered that it was retaliation for Young Dolph's murder, maybe some kind of response from people connected to Paper Route Empire. But let's be real, there's no proof behind that theory. Still, the timing was serious because Big Jook never got the chance to respond to Smith's accusations, never got to defend himself, and never got to tell any side of the story that could have changed everything. His death basically erased what could have been one of the most important voices in figuring out the full truth. Whether to deny the claims, admit involvement, or even point toward other people. With him gone, a big piece of the puzzle disappeared forever. Another major name wrapped in the conspiracy talk was Hernandez Govan, who prosecutors called the mastermind behind coordinating the whole hit. Govan pleaded not guilty, and he was found not guilty in August 2025. Word around the city was that Govan had strong ties to both Yo Gotti and Big Jook, with photos and online posts showing he was definitely in the CMG circle. But just like with Gotti, there was no public evidence directly tying him to Yo Gotti regarding the murder specifically. Govan even turned down a plea deal, choosing to fight the charges instead of bargaining his way out, and the jury ultimately cleared him. That alone added even more mystery to who really planned what. The fourth defendant, Jamarcus Johnson, Justin Johnson's half-brother, took a plea deal back in June 2023. He admitted to accessory charges, specifically that he helped the shooters get away after the murder and helped organize the payment. His testimony included references to text messages where Smith was asking about Big Jook, which lines up with parts of Smith's story. But just like Smith, Jamarcus had a reason to cooperate. He was trying to cut down his sentence. So even though his testimony supported some details, the jury knew he had motivation to say whatever helped him the most. Beyond those four defendants, investigators kept digging, looking at other possible connections in Yo Gotti's circle, including Black Youngsta, the CMG artist who was wrapped up in the 2017 Charlotte shooting involving Dolph. With so many old incidents and so many ties to the same names, detectives weren't ignoring anybody who had past friction with Dolph. This case wasn't just about one shooter, it became a storm of street politics, loyalty, old grudges, and unanswered questions that still shake Memphis today. In early 2022, right after Johnson and Smith were taken in, reports started circulating that they had hired Art Horn, the same lawyer who once represented both Yo Gotti and Black Youngsta. That connection instantly had the streets side-eyeing the situation, wondering if CMG still had some kind of tie to the case. Horn later dropped them and publicly denied being hired by CMG or anyone working for them. But that brief moment where the lines crossed made the whole situation even more complicated. And that leads to the biggest question still floating in the air. If Big Jook really did call the hit on Young Dolph, was he moving on his own, handling street business behind his brother's back? Or was Yo Gotti aware of what was going down, maybe even involved in the decision-making? The lack of direct evidence tying Gotti to the plan, mixed with Big Jook being gone before he could ever speak on anything, means we might never hear the full truth about who actually pulled the strings. One of the biggest unanswered questions comes from Cornelius Smith's claim that somebody tied to CMG dropped 50 bands to cover his legal fees. If that's legit, and Smith said it under oath, then it sounds way bigger than one person acting alone. That kind of move would hint at someone trying to protect the people involved or trying to keep certain voices quiet. But the details around that alleged payment are still foggy. And with Memphis being a tight-knit city where people help each other out, it's also possible the money came from someone unrelated to the organization, someone who just didn't want Smith flipping under pressure. In a place where loyalty can decide someone's whole future, it's not unheard of for folks to step in and help with legal fees, especially when big charges are on the table. Another thing that had everyone confused was the huge gap between the rumored $100,000 bounty and the $800 Smith said he actually got. That's not just a small mix-up, that's a massive drop-off. If someone thinks they're getting 40 racks for something this serious and then ends up with $800, that's enough to make anyone question the entire operation. Yet Smith still cooperated with prosecutors and testified against Johnson, even while saying he was shorted. And that raises a loud question. Why would anyone with access to big money and supposed resources only pay the shooters a tiny fraction of what they were promised? If this was really a well-organized hit with real money behind it, the payments should have matched the plan. Maybe the $100,000 figure was exaggerated from the start, or maybe the full payment was supposed to come later, but Big Jook's death in January 2024 cut everything short. Or maybe paying the full amount would have left a trail someone didn't want investigators to find. Whatever the real reason, the fact that Smith only received $800 makes the entire organized hit storyline look sloppy and confusing, not polished and strategic. And if this really had the backing of a powerful label or anyone with real resources, you'd expect the operation to look way cleaner, not like something thrown together at the last second. The messy way everything played out makes people wonder if Big Jook and CMG's involvement was truly as official as Smith made it sound. And for what? Pride, respect, control in Memphis's rap scene, loyalty to an artist or a neighborhood? Whatever the motive was, the cost was way too high and the outcome destroyed far more than it ever could have gained. The truth is, we might never have a full answer to who really holds responsibility for Young Dolph's death. What we do know is this: Young Dolph's murder was a heartbreaking loss, a senseless tragedy that destroyed families, shook the city, and left the culture without one of its most independent voices. Dolph was respected for his grind, his leadership, his generosity, and his ability to build something powerful from nothing. His death didn't just silence an artist, it took away a father, a businessman, and a hometown figure who poured back into the community. And even though the shooters were convicted, the deeper questions, why he was really targeted, who gave the real order, and whether major players in Memphis's music world were involved, remain unanswered today.